I want to welcome y'all to the Veterinarian's Black Bag. This is brought to you by the Partnership for Environmental Education and Rural Health. I'm Dr. Dan Posey. I'm a clinical associate professor with the College of Veterinary Medicine. I'm a veterinarian, and I'm going to talk today about vaccinations. Today's quest and discovery is about vaccinations and why we should vaccinate. Vaccinations control diseases and can protect individual animals from illness and death. If you see here on the picture, there's a group of cattle there, and we use vaccinations in this way. We help to vaccinate the animals to help to protect them from illness and death. In today's discussion, we're going to talk about infections, what vaccines are, how vaccines work, history of the vaccination research, future developments expected, and dog and cat vaccinations. Let's start with the basis. So what is an infection? Infection is when microbes invade the body. We see here in the feedlot, we see a steer here that has a snotty nose. It's just like when we get a snotty nose. The bacteria that invades our respiratory tree, our nose and our lungs, causes infection, and the body's reaction to that is to fight off that through the immune system. Now, there's all types of different microbes. For example, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoans. So, how do we increase and resist these infections? There's lots of different ways to be able to do that. So, first thing is we have a group of puppies in a kennel. And you think the kennel environment itself would be a place where infections would happen. But if we keep that environment clean and we keep the population protected, we can actually have an environment like this that causes very little problems. We also can raise the resistance of infection by having a good and healthy diet. You see fruits and vegetables here, but having a wide range of dietary needs and making sure that that healthy diet will help reduce the risk of infection. Smoking. Taking good health decisions also makes it where you can increase your resistance against infection by not smoking. The other is exercise. Routine daily exercise is an important part of resisting infection. So, improving general health and proper nutrition through exercise and healthy lifestyle is one of the most important parts of increasing our resistance to infections. Another part of that is vaccinations. And vaccinations goes hand in hand with this resistance to infection by using some of the techniques we talked earlier. Healthy lifestyles is by far the best preventative of maintaining your ability to fight off infections. So what are those healthy lifestyles? Well, one of them is exercise. Eating healthy food, taking vitamins, regular exercise that stimulates your immune system so that it can fight off infection. It's just like one of the building blocks associated with that. The other is good sanitation practices. As you know right now with the flu, one of the things that we're supposed to do is use hand sanitizers when you come in contact with people. That's just one of the ways to eliminate the viral particles that causes flu. And so washing your hands, those things are really important. Now, on the website, in the PEER website at peer.tam.edu, you can check our website, and there's a thing on body defenses. As a veterinarian, vaccinations are a really important part of what we do. We use vaccinations with the healthy lifestyle choices to help our best friends and making them stay safe. Why is vaccinations important? Well, first thing is we can target specific diseases that might be in an environment or might be our animals at risk. For example, cattle with lepto. Cattle that are in an environment that is wet, that has the bacteria present, could be the problem. And so by vaccinating that animal, we reduce the disease risk tremendously by targeting that disease in our vaccination program. We also can protect those who are vaccinated. So if you think about the population of animals, and we vaccinate animals, those animals help protect each other by not allowing the disease process to take hold in that animal population. The last is it stops epidemics. So by controlling disease, we actually reduce the death loss associated with that disease. So the goals in vaccination is first, we want to vaccinate the largest number of individuals that are in the population of risks. So for example, your puppy. Your puppy, if you take it to the veterinarian, he vaccinates it for the diseases that are present that puppy might get. But it's also because puppies go out to parks and goes to places that the more puppies we vaccinate, the more disease that we reduce in that population risk. And the population is at risk, the puppies. The other thing we want to do is we want to vaccinate each individual no more frequently than necessary. For example, smallpox. Smallpox vaccine is something I'm vaccinated against, and I was only vaccinated one time. So that's the kind of vaccine we'd like. Most vaccines need multiple vaccinations to get the immunity to a certain level. So the important part of this is that we'd love to have a vaccine that we only have to vaccinate once with. And lastly, vaccine only against infectious agents in which the individual has a risk at or exposure to. We don't vaccinate every cattle herd for all diseases that cattle can be infected with. We only vaccinate that cattle herd on that population that is at risk with that certain disease. And that's really important to have the vaccines that are necessary, a vaccination program that targets that individual population. So, vaccines consist of killing or weakening the microbe, the bacteria or virus, that stimulates the immune system against the microbe. Why must microbe be killed or weakened? I think that's a really good question. You may take time right now and pause and discuss that in the room. Why is it so important to have the microbe be killed or weakened in a vaccine? Now the reason for that is that the microbe itself has to be killed or weakened so that it doesn't cause disease in the population. What we do is we attenuate the vaccine, is what we'll do. We actually weaken it or kill it and allows just the part that would stimulate the immune system to be present in that vaccine. Now, the problem with that is, and I'll use the flu vaccine for example, sometimes the infectious agents can change their genetic makeup. And that makes it really difficult to match the vaccine against the disease that's present in the population. That's why every year, in the fall time of the year, there's a new vaccine that is produced for flu, because the genetic makeup of the flu is based on what was last year's population of viruses that were causing the flu in the American population. Okay, so there are required vaccinations in human and Texas. There's polio, Haemophilus, influenza B, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, hepatitis A, chickenpox, measles, mumps, rubella, and hepatitis B. Now, I think it's really important that you realize that, you have been vaccinated for these things. And so, which ones have you been vaccinated for? That would be a really good project to go and find out when and how these vaccines are used in human medicine. So, how are vaccines made? The first thing we have to do is we have to grow those microbes on a suitable medium. And if you look at the picture here, you see two scientists growing these microbes on agar plates, blood, or on embryos. And then after those microbes grow on that suitable medium, then what they do is they go and purify the product. So they remove the compounds that cause the allergic reaction. So let's take the time right now to review what vaccines are. What are the two main ways to improve resistance to infection? Why is vaccinations important? What should the goals of vaccinations be? What is a vaccine? How are vaccines made? How vaccinations works is going to be the next lecture that we talk about, in your body's defense system. You can go on the peer.tamu.edu and you can see a separate lesson on a series on immunity. There's two types of immunizations. There's active and passive. And first, let's talk about the active. This is the one we usually think about. For example, we go back to that steer in the feedlot, and it's been invaded by a bacteria, okay? Well, the steer's reaction is, it triggers antibodies that helps to fight off that disease. That's active. The bacteria gets in our system, and we produce antibodies that will fight off that infection. The next thing is that we can use vaccines the same way. Now, these are attenuated bacteria and viruses, meaning they're inactivated. And we can use those same viral parts and bacteria by injecting them and vaccinating the patient with it. But we do not cause disease. Passive immunity is a little bit different. For example, 30 years ago, when a person was bit by a rabid animal, what they would do is put immunoglobulins in your body by injecting your stomach lining with them. And those immunoglobulins, the antibodies, were actually injected into the person that went and actively fought off the infection. Immediate protection, but it can't last very long. And that's the problem with passive immunization. When we give an antitoxin, which is like the tetanus antitoxin, to horses after they've been injected, the problem is it only lasts 3 to 4 weeks. This does not have long-term protection for the patient. Now, there's also passive immunity that comes from the mother to the dam. And none of these passive immunizations cause any disease at all because we're not dealing with the microbes. We're actually dealing mainly with the antibodies. We have a baby calf here that is nursing for the first time. When that baby nurses its mother, it actually picks up the antibodies through this nursing and out of the milk the first milk called colostrum. Those antibodies are absorbed by the intestinal lining of the baby calf, and the baby calf is protected for 2 to 4 months by this. It's really important the baby calf nurse in the first 6 hours because that is when the most antibodies can be absorbed through the milk. All right, weakened vaccines. Produced by weakening a virus. We talked about this earlier, removing the disease-causing ability. And so what we do is called attenuation. And so we attenuate the vaccine. Now these type of vaccines that actually have the viral part, this might be a modified live virus, is what it is. We've actually removed the disease-causing portion of it. The pros on this is it elicits a huge, large immune system response. Okay? And so you only have to receive 1 or maybe 2 vaccines. The problem with it is they have to be stored under special conditions. And most of these vaccines have to be mixed in water with the viral parts together and they're activated. Now that vaccine has to be used within 2 hours of it being mixed together. So that's a con because you can't store that vaccine for very long. The other thing is that early in this technology, there was a lot of problems with weakening the virus. And when we weaken that virus, if we don't weaken it enough, it could cause disease, even though it's very rare. You can inactivate the vaccine. Okay, we can kill the infectious agent. We can kill actually the virus itself. Okay. The good things about this is that most of those do not have to be refrigerated. They will never come back to life because they're killed. That's a good thing. The con portions of it is they need lots of boosters. We don't get the immune response like we did earlier with a weakened vaccine or attenuated vaccine. With a kill vaccine, usually it takes multiple injections to get the immune system to respond and produce antibodies. This is made by inactivating the toxin itself to get an immune response from the body. And we're going to talk about tetanus, because tetanus is probably the one that most of you have been vaccinated against. I've been vaccinated against. But we vaccinate a lot of animals for tetanus. The good things about this is you only had to vaccinate them once or twice to get a good immune response against the toxin, not the virus itself or the bacteria, but the bacteria's toxin. That's what it produces to cause disease. They never have to be reactivated, and they can never be reactivated, and they never cause disease. The con portion is that they had to be refrigerated. Subunit vaccines. This is newer technology. We just take a portion of the infection agent, the antigenic part, the part that stimulates the immune system. And a good example of that is hepatitis B or streptococcus pneumonia. Okay? The great part of that is on subunit vaccines is the subunit vaccine can never cause disease. It's just a part. For like a car, it would be, if we're talking about a vehicle, okay? And what we do is we look at the car, and all we are taking off the doors, okay? If we take off the doors and I give it to you, you can't drive around the car with just the doors. But the good thing about this is that when we do this on a subunit vaccine, we're just taking a portion of that virus. And so that virus can never cause disease because not all the virus is present. The con, this is a more difficult technology, and it's more expensive to produce. Safer, but more expensive. So let's review. How do vaccines work? What are antibodies, and what do they do? What is the difference between active and passive vaccination? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of each? Research is often aimed at developing subunit vaccines. Why is that? The history of vaccination. You can see all these dates, and you go all the way back to 1798 and the smallpox vaccine. And the way that was discovered is really, really important. But as we go through here, you can see all the discoveries of the different vaccinations that has been produced. Let's talk about the first one, the smallpox. The first vaccination experience was done in the 1700s, and there's a very deadly virus that they're talking about, the smallpox virus. It was spreading throughout England. There was a physician called Dr. Jenner that noticed something. He noticed that milkmaids did not get smallpox. So, in 1796, Dr. Edward Jenner inoculated a boy with cowpox. Then showed later that smallpox inoculation did not infect him. And in fact, that was the first vaccination. Now, where do we get the name vaccinations from? Well, vacca, which is Latin, is where it comes from because of the cowpox vaccine. And that's how vaccination was, that word came from, the root word coming from cattle. So, late 1900s and Louis Pasteur, this is the age of discovery about the discovering about bacteria causing disease. And there was a group of scientists that said that if they could isolate the bacteria that was causing the problem, they could produce a vaccine that would protect the animals. And if you look back all the way to Jenner, you have Louis Pasteur that's doing the same thing. So he created the anthrax vaccine by growing the microbe in culture and then used and attenuated it and caused it to lose its ability to cause illness like today's vaccine. And he vaccinated animals for them. It was 99% effective against continuous anthrax. And if you go on the peer professor presentations on anthrax, you can find more information about this. He also produced the first rabies vaccine. And he did that by growing it on duck embryos and doing the same thing, like we talked before, attenuating the vaccine and using that to cause the immune system to fight off rabies. So, as we review, what are Edward's contributions to vaccine research? what were Louis Pasteur's first contributions to the vaccination? What are the average lifespan before the advent of vaccination, and what is it today? So what's in the vaccine future? Well, with the technology that we have now, genetic engineers, food became part of the disease-causing organism. And this is really important because there are going to be, here at Texas A&M, what we've had is we have a goat milk, and if the child drinks the goat milk, it will protect them against malaria. I think this is so fascinating because this would be a really important part of the way to protect the world against certain things, especially in undeveloped countries. It eliminates the expensive storage and transportation of vaccines and refrigeration. It limits our ability to get this technology out in underdeveloped parts of this world. So, genetic and recombinant and bacterial resistance. Many viruses have changed their genetic makeup, and it becomes strong resistant to vaccine or bacteria that once were infective. And this is a really big concern. The gene sequencing of these microbes helps scientists to understand how the microbe attacks the body by using things that could block the microbe to be able to attach in the respiratory systems of cattle, or causing diarrhea in people. If you could have the technology and understand the bacteria well enough, if we could use blocking agents that would block these agents to getting hold, that would be an important way to fight off these microbes and these disease-causing problems. And then identifying antigenic sites as the target for drugs and subunit vaccines. So the gene sequencing is so important in this. Once strategies for genetic engineering vaccines, and this is how it's done. They identify the antigen. That's the part that will cause the antibodies to react and cause an immune response. Identify the gene that causes the antigen. Insert a gene into the harmless virus. Infect the patient with that virus. The gene makeup comes from the antigen within the patient, and antigens are produced, the antibodies, to fight off the infection or to make the patient resistant. Okay? So what's a good example of that? A good example is the production of West Nile virus. They used a canary pox virus to be able to help produce the antigen stimulation in the patient to protect horses against West Nile virus. Allergic reactions to vaccines are very, very rare, but they're there. And they can range from allergic reaction, meaning a runny nose or maybe itchy nose or itchy eyes, to sudden death. Pets should be monitored after giving vaccines to watch. Anaphylaxis is a rare, life-threatening, immediate allergic reaction that rarely occurs. Readily treated by veterinarians, and what we do is, if untreated, they result in shock and death. But veterinarians are really conscious about this portion and watch after giving vaccines about the rare anaphylaxis that occurs. You've heard about this. Bee stings on people that have anaphylactic reactions to somebody that's allergic to bee stings. Well, this can happen in vaccines too. The anaphylaxis is a rare, life-threatening, immediate allergic reaction that happens rarely when vaccinating a pet or an animal. It can be readily treated by veterinarians, and that, if not treated, what happens is it results in shock, respiratory failure, heart failure, and even death. The more common adverse reaction is the painful swelling, reddening, or irritation at the injection site, followed by mild fever, decreased appetite, and some depression. If you happen to notice any of these in yourself, or in your pet, or in the animals that you have, you need to make immediate contact with your veterinarian to tell them about this, because vaccine reactions, or even mild ones like this, can be addressed. These reactions may sound scary, but these reactions are very, very rare. Even the pain, swelling, redness, and irritation at the injection site, that local reaction, is very, very rare. And so the idea that we talk about these so you'll be informed, but if you happen to see one of these, and Vaccination for your dogs and cats. Basic principles. Young animals need to be vaccinated early and often to get their immune system to respond properly to that vaccine. And then also, these vaccines need to be boosted often because vaccine immunity sometimes wanes as you get farther away from the time that you started the vaccine. The importance of physical exam cannot be stressed more. Pets need to be healthy. Animals need to be healthy when they receive their vaccines. Sick animals do not respond very well to vaccination programs. So it's really important that the veterinarian provide this health and nutritional information for the animals that you care for, and that a good physical exam is given to those animals prior to vaccination. Pets need to visit their veterinarian once a year for healthy and happier, and they'll live longer. We know this, that your pets live longer if they have a relationship with the veterinarian. Rabies vaccinations for dogs are very, very important. Dogs and cats are very important. Rabies vaccines is required by law in many states, and it varies from community to community, and we need to make sure we adhere to this. But basically it's this, is rabies vaccine is very, very important because of the zoonotic effect of rabies, meaning that the animals can give it to man. It can go from wildlife to your dog to you through saliva and contact a rabid animal. By protecting your dogs, it protects them from this life-stealing disease. Puppies should be vaccinated with a single dose of killed rabies vaccine at 12 to 16 weeks of age. Dogs that have unknown vaccination history should receive a single dose of rabies vaccine. The adult, those are one of those great vaccines. You only have to vaccinate them once to get a year's immunity or more from one injection. A booster is required 1 year later, or there is a 3-year vaccine that's out there now for both puppies and adult animals. Rabies vaccine should be performed every year to 3 years, depending on the license